Hello, Mr. Chair. This is Simon Rossiegel, the Legislative Assistant. Through you to the committee, I believe we do have quorum and members are present, so we can switch the break screen at your convenience, at your direction.
Please proceed with that. I was just watching the Mayor's State of the Municipality address, and that has concluded. So let's proceed with this meeting. Good afternoon. My name is Paul Russell, and welcome to the Audit and Finance Standing Committee meeting for February 11th. This was supposed to start at 1 p.m., but because of the Mayor's State of the Municipality address, we have held off until the end of that presentation. This is a regular meeting of the committee. We will be having a few extra councillors join us for one of the portions in the meeting. So at this point, I'd like to call the meeting to order and do an AV check with each of the councillors that we have in the meeting. So, Councillor Hensby, are you with us?
Affirmative, I'm here at City Hall.
Wonderful, thank you. Councillor Purdy, are you with us?
I sure am.
Good stuff, it's good to hear you. Councillor Cleary.
Hello, Mr. Chair. Happy to be here.
Good stuff. Thank you. Councillor Morse. Councillor Morse, are you with us? I see you in the meeting, but you're muted. Okay. Councillor Daigle-Gammon.
Here as well, Mr. Chair. Ready for a great meeting.
Good stuff. Thank you. Councillor Lindell Smith, are you with us?
I am here. Happy to be part of it.
Wonderful. Thank you. I don't see Councillor Blackburn as an attendee of the meeting yet, so hopefully she will be joining us. And Councillor Kent.
I am here.
Good stuff. Thank you very much. We have the next item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes of January 19th, 2021. We have a number of members of the Board of Police Commissioners who have joined us, and I just would like to remind those councillors that this is a meeting of the Audit and Finance Standing Committee, and so it would be the members of the Audit and Finance Standing Committee who are able to make motions and vote. I'm not going to restrict the members of the Board of Police Commissioners or any other councillor from speaking up and asking questions, but the only people who would be able to make motions and second them and vote would be from the Audit and Finance Committee. So the next item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes of January 19th, 2021.
Mr. Chair, Councillor Cleary would move those minutes.
Wonderful, thank you. Do I have a seconder?
Gammon?
Councillor Daigle-Gammon, thank you very much. Are there any errors or omissions? Okay, thank you. In that case, all in favor of the minutes of January 19th, 2021, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Wonderful. Those carry. Approval of the order of business and approval of additions and deletions. So can I first of all have someone move the approval of the order of business and approval of additions and deletions?
Councillor Cleary would move the approval of the agenda.
Second that.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Hensby, for seconding that. I would like to, due to the way the meeting is going to proceed, I would like to have item 12.2.1, the third quarter 2020-21 financial report come before the Auditor General's report, item 12.1.1.
Second that.
I don't know that I can make a motion, so I would need someone to move that.
I'll move it then. Councillor Cleary.
Second that.
Great. Thank you. And then all in favor of, or are there any other changes to the order of business and approvals and deletions? Over to the clerk, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We have not received through the clerk's office any additional requests for additions or deletions to the agenda. I believe the only thing we've heard is the request for that change in order of business, which has been put on the floor.
Okay, thank you. And I forget my procedure here. Do I need to vote on that before voting on the entire amended agenda?
I believe that we can vote on the entire agenda as one item, but we do need to just ensure that that's a 2/3 majority vote, I believe. Or in this case, I believe would have to be a unanimous vote, which I think we should be able to achieve.
I think we should be able to achieve. I assume that would be unanimous of the councillors who are present.
I consider it a friendly amendment to the agenda. Let's just move forward and approve it as amended.
Okay, so all those in favor of the amended agenda signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Wonderful. We have an agenda. Business arising out of the minutes, there is none. Call for declaration of conflicts of interest. Okay, not hearing any. Motions of reconsideration, there is none. Motions of rescission, there is none. Consideration of deferred business, there is none. Notices of tabled matters, there is none. Correspondence, petitions, and delegations. Over to the clerk. Do we have any correspondence?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Besides that correspondence submitted related to the presentation request, there has been no correspondence submitted with this agenda at this time.
Okay, thank you. And I believe that's been distributed to all councillors. Do we have any petitions? Okay, hearing none. I would like to proceed with 10.3.1, the Neptune Theatre COVID-19 response. Do we have Lisa Bugden with us?
Good afternoon, Chairman Russell.
Good afternoon. Just a reminder, if you're joining us by phone, to have your laptop or any other device muted so that we don't get feedback. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman Russell. Are we clear to proceed?
Yes, go ahead.
Thank you very much to you and committee members. My name is Lisa Bugden and I am the General Manager of Neptune Theatre. Thank you again for the opportunity to provide an update on the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic on Neptune Theatre. I'm going to introduce my colleague, Jeremy Webb. Slide change, please, Simon.
Hello there, everyone. This is Jeremy Webb, Artistic Director of Neptune Theatre. Some background for you. Neptune Theatre has been in operation since 1963 on the same site on the corner of Argyle Street and Sackville in Jabuktuk, Halifax. And this would have been our 58th season of live theatre. For 58 years, Neptune Theatre has contributed to the cultural, social, and economic well-being of Halifax and the province. With a refocused artistic vision, Neptune Theatre audiences experience works from Atlantic Canadian and Canadian playwrights, stories that represent the diversity of our communities and region. Accessible programming so more people can experience live theatre, and increased opportunities for the growth and development of emerging local artists. All that, and we still produce crowd-pleasing, award-winning entertainment. Since 2017, Neptune Theatre has been on a journey of change to better reflect the community it serves. It was apparent and necessary that this theatrical institution needed to open its doors to the theatre community and to the broader community. Over the last 3 years, Neptune Theatre has embarked on a number of activities and projects that reflect this goal. We created the RBC Chrysalis Project, a mentorship training program for emerging artists, now in its 3rd year. We created a new Atlantic Canadian play development program called Incubator. We partnered with the Halifax Fringe Festival, providing performance space to dozens of shows each festival. We partnered with Autism Nova Scotia to present relaxed performances and initiated ASL performances for the deaf community. We enhanced our own Open Spaces program, seeing our space open to artists in our community who were previously unable to access our facility. As we do this work, our programming, our casting, and our staffing has seen a shift, a move towards diversity and inclusion like never before. Neptune Theatre plays a significant role in creating a vibrant downtown core, a vital and engaging creative city, and a progressive and impressive role in the provincial and national arts and culture industry. In our 2018-19 season, the last pre-COVID complete year of activity, Neptune welcomed a record 105,000 patrons, presented over 400 performances, engaged more than 320 artists, directors, designers, and theater educators, and posted a second consecutive surplus. Over to you, Lisa, and slide change, please, Simon.
Over the last 3 years, Neptune has worked to become more responsive to the community, less reliant on government support, and more sustainable. The theatre introduced summer programming, which generated $400,000 in revenue in 2019. Approximately 20% of summer patrons are visitors to the city. Neptune is very much part of the tourism mix. We support the Show Your Badge initiative, and last January, the team from Neptune's production of the Argyle Street Kitchen Party entertained thousands of delegates in Halifax for the Loblaws kickoff event. The Neptune Theatre School has been proudly offering theatre education for more than 33 years and has seen year-on-year increases since 2018. The Theatre School now offers programming to 1,400 students of all ages. We offer scholarships and bursaries to help provide access to students across our community. Neptune has expanded its community engagement and opened the doors so more people across HRM can explore and experience live theatre. In 2019, these efforts combined resulted in a 25% increase in patrons, the highest in Neptune's history. Slide change, please. The timing of the pandemic has had a devastating impact on the theatre. Each spring, Neptune announces its next season and opens the season-ending musical, which typically generates between 25% and 30% of the theatre's earned revenue from ticket sales. Between March 13 and May 31st, 2019, Neptune processed more than $1.3 million in ticket sales, subscriptions, renewals, and donations. Neptune responded immediately last March, closing the theatre to curb the spread of the coronavirus. Over to Jeremy.
The theatre cancelled productions, postponed our season-closing musical, Billy Elliot, and our annual fundraiser. We suspended our school tour, which traditionally reaches 20,000 students, 10,000 in HRM alone, in schools across the province, and subsequently postponed the balance of the 2021 season. On March 13th, 2020, revenue dried up almost overnight. Our industry was the first to completely close down and in all likelihood will be the last to fully reopen.
Neptune Theatre is empty, as these images dictate. Revenue is down 90% year on year. We have lost more than $4 million in revenue to date. That revenue helps to propel the theatre forward, covering pre-production costs. Subscriptions are down 70% year on year. As an artist-led organization, we're committed to paying artists fairly for their work. With the closure and postponements, we have incurred more than $157,000 in contractual obligations to artists alone. Our financial partners have been very supportive and have worked with us to defer and renegotiate monthly financial obligations. Neptune is now working with suppliers and partners, many of them are friends and neighbors in HRM, to restructure payments and come out the other end making good on our outstanding payables. Slide change, please, Simon. Over the last 10 months, management has worked with our board to develop contingency plans and to position the theatre to reopen. As this graph illustrates, close to 90% of revenue are tied to productions. Without the ability to produce and present live theatre, Neptune has found it very difficult to deliver on its mission and to serve the community. Like other organizations, we have applied for and received support from the provincial and federal government. The Canada Employee Wage Subsidy has been instrumental in maintaining a core group of employees. This team has mounted a series of fundraising initiatives to support ongoing operations. We now need working capital to support reopening. Slide change, please, Simon. Neptune and its patrons inject more than $7 million in direct spending into the local economy every year. We are part of the Downtown Entertainment District. When we are in production, upwards of 600 people are at Neptune each and every day. Many go to dinner before or after a performance. We have partnerships with food and beverage operations across HRM. Neptune pays more than $5.5 million in wages and salaries every year. We support the growth and development of the creative community, as Jeremy said, engaging more than 320 artists, directors, designers, choreographers, and musicians each season. Over to Jeremy. Slide change, please, Simon.
The theatre has managed to pivot operations to maintain connection and engagement with the community and is now strategizing for our reopening and to get back to production activity in the late summer of 2021. Now, with public health restrictions being eased slightly last Monday, we can now plan to welcome an audience that is 20% of our capacity. So even though there is light at the end of this dark tunnel, we fully expect to be operating under necessary and robust restrictions for the health and safety of our employees and our patrons. Throughout 2020, we created and maintained a digital platform that keeps our patrons connected and keeps Neptune Theatre in their thoughts. This platform also managed to create jobs for artists, technicians, musicians. It was a taste of hope. For example, 51 schools received a special filmed presentation of a seasonal holiday show in December. We were able to bring theater to hundreds of students, along with study guides, extra activities, interaction, and joy. Since March 2020, we've spent our time planning the unplannable, much like most industries. Multiple scenarios in hundreds of Zoom meetings have been discussed over 10 months. With vaccines starting to roll out and, as we hope, restrictions ease, Neptune must now plan for its future. We must reopen this summer and see Nova Scotians safely return to the theatre. Slide change, please, Simon.
COVID-19 has had an immediate and unprecedented impact on Neptune Theatre. The 58-year-old theatre is looking to the future and seeking support to manage the protracted shutdown of its operations. Neptune is taking steps to mitigate the long-term impact of the closure on our artists, employees, and patrons, developing contingency plans and working with the private sector to defer expenses, drive revenue, and preserve capital in order to reopen.
Neptune Theatre would like to formally request support from the Halifax Regional Municipality to navigate these unprecedented challenges caused by the global pandemic and to ensure that Neptune Theatre and its extensive service to the community remains in place post-pandemic for decades to come. We request a one-time emergency relief support package of $100,000 in Neptune's 2021 fiscal year, which closes May 31st, 21. Neptune Theatre is a cultural landmark in the HRM, a part of the rich fabric of the cornerstone entertainment industry with an impact on so many businesses, organizations, artists, and constituents across the HRM. We're taking a long-term view of this situation and are planning for what looks like a 3 to 5 year recovery period. In this rare and difficult time, we are calling upon Council through your committee to take affirmative action and support all that we stand for and do. Thank you.
Slide change, please. Chairman Russell, thank you for taking the time to have us present today. We appreciate the committee's attention, and should you wish to invite questions, both Jeremy and I are happy to answer any that may arise. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, and thank you very much for the presentation again. I appreciate seeing it a second time. It's phenomenal, and what you bring to Halifax is simply unequaled. Councillor Cleary, if you would please put the motion on the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd be happy to, as someone who has enjoyed Neptune Theatre as a customer for a very long time, whose children have attended acting camps. It is in many ways an anchor for our downtown. So I would be happy to put a motion on the floor to request a staff report for the Audit and Finance Committee looking at the $100,000 request from Neptune Theatre. Okay,
thank you. Do we have a seconder for that motion?
I'll second it, Councillor Morse.
Thank you, Councillor Morse. Councillor Cleary, would you like to proceed?
Mr. Chair,
Yes, sir.
if I
Mr.
may
Traves.
suggest,
Yes.
given that we're in the budget process, that maybe it would be appropriate to request a staff report and refer the matter to the budget committee of the whole on budget.
Yeah, that was the motion that I moved.
I thought you did.
Thank you for that clarification, Sean. Sean, would you like to go ahead?
I have nothing further to say other than I think this is worthy of our consideration, and I look forward to seeing the information come back to the budget committee, and hopefully we can find ways to work this into our budget, and hopefully my colleagues will support that.
Super. Okay. Thank you very much. Councillor Daigle-Gammon.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Thank you very much for the presentation, and I have been a patron of Neptune, I think, since I'm going to say the late 70s when I came to the mainland to go to university. I do have a question about your business plan, though, and I wonder, is there an ask to other levels of government for the reopening, or is this ask only to HRA?
Councillor, if I may, I'd be happy to respond. Yes, we have asked and received some additional funding from both the province, and we are in the process of awaiting instruction from the federal government for supplementary emergency funds for COVID relief.
Sorry, Councillor Daigle-Gammon, I believe you may be muted.
Thank you very much. I was. A supplementary question, Mr. Chair.
Yes, absolutely. You still have plenty of time.
Great. Would you care to share what the ask is to the province and to the feds, just so we can understand what the percentage or what the scope is?
Certainly, Councillor. We are awaiting instructions in terms of the parameters from the federal government, but certainly it would be in excess of what we have asked the city. Thus far, we have received $30,000 in support to assist us with our digital content, as Jeremy described earlier from the province, and recently were awarded an additional $75,000 from the province for ongoing operational support.
Very much. I appreciate the information.
Mr. Chair, you're muted.
I just realized that. Thank you very much. And thank you very much for the response, Lisa. I don't see any other questions in the chat. If any other councillors would like to ask a question of Neptune Theatre or about the motion, then please enter that into the chat. Go ahead, Councillor Purdy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My question is more about the motion. So would this be, if it goes to the budget committee, that would be part of the parking lot? Is that what I'm understanding? And then we would vote on that at the end of the budget process?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, thank you. And I also love Neptune, and my kids have gone to the camps and just really appreciate the service that you give to our community. Thank you.
Thank you, and welcome, Mayor Savage. It was great to see you in the State of the Municipality address. We held off this meeting, of course, until that had concluded. Please proceed.
Thank you, Chair. I'm just getting up to speed. I don't see the motion in my package here.
No, it was a motion from the floor requesting $100,000, a one-time payment to help Neptune Theatre with their reopening.
Right. Okay. So I guess, did Lisa present? Is that what?
Lisa and Jeremy presented. Yes.
Jeremy too. That must have been a production.
Oh, it was fantastic. It was well scripted.
Yeah. I just want to say so. Lisa and Jeremy, thank you very much. And I know how much Neptune has been going through this crazy time, and had a chance to get up and talk to you about it. I'm not sure when that was, maybe in November, and I knew that you were going to be coming forward looking for a little bit of interim support. And I guess at this point, I don't know if we know a source of the funding. Paul, would we send this further for a source? But I would support it at this point in time. And, you know, I just did my chamber address, and while Halifax has done well in many areas, you know, the hospitality and of course the cultural communities have not. They've suffered. And when you think about the huge impact that Neptune is in our community, it's just terrible. I mean, my association with Neptune goes back to the early 1990s, just before I was born, and part of the board back then, and setting up of the new Neptune, which is kind of like the new bridge, not that new anymore. But I will support this. We'll find the money. I'm going to find some other way to do it, other than adding it on to operating. But for now, I would just want to indicate my support and thank my colleagues on the council for considering that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Smith. Councillor Smith, you appear to be muted.
It's possible Councillor Smith may have been dropped from the meeting. I'm just looking and can't see
fiddle.
Councillor Smith's icon. So I'll notify if Councillor Smith rejoins the meeting.
Okay, he just messaged in the chat a couple of minutes ago and indicated that he did have a question for Neptune about part of the presentation, so hopefully he will be back soon. I also very much appreciate everything that Neptune has brought to Halifax, the performances, the variety, the music, the education that you've brought for our youth, the opportunities has been absolutely phenomenal, and I will be supporting this motion fully. I do see Councillor Smith has rejoined the meeting while we had that commercial interruption, and so Councillor Smith, please proceed.
Yes, sir. I'm having some serious Teams issues, so I'm just audio now. So thank you, Neptune, for presenting, and you know, always been a huge supporter and continue to be supportive of the work they do. And even through the pandemic, you know, my daughter had the pleasure of joining the acting camp, which she loved. So you know, this is a conflict of interest, and I'm happy to recuse myself. But really, I missed the last part of the presentation, and obviously I can't vote because I'm not here at the committee, but my just quick question is around the money that's being asked. Is it being asked as a relief from COVID-19, or is it being asked as a grant that we grant any other organization through other channels that we've done in the past?
Mr. Chair, if I may answer Councillor Smith. We're asking for supplementary relief. We are fortunate and have long appreciated the grant that we received from the city for our ongoing operations, but we find ourselves in extenuating circumstances and want very much to continue the support and the work that we do in the community with your assistance.
Gotcha. So that's thank you. That's helpful. The only thing that I would say to the committee, and you know, understanding that you know we haven't been the level of government providing relief for COVID-19, it could create an the aspect from other organizations seeing us as a place that they could get COVID relief money from, and you know this is a little different, obviously, but I just want to give that type of context that you know that could be something where folks could see the municipality as a place to get COVID-19 relief. You know, many organizations who are dealing with that issue. So, you know, thank you for answering those questions, and I'll just continue to sit back and listen.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor Smith. That is a worthy caution. We are asking for a staff report at this point and would be able to debate that once we are in the committee of the whole on budget. And the CAO has pasted more information into the chat. The staff report will identify a source of funds, assess their financials, confirm support from other levels of government. In the interest of full disclosure, the theatre currently benefits from 100% property tax release at $482,000 and an annual grant. So with that, and seeing no further questions, I would ask for all in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed to the motion signify by saying nay. Wonderful, the motion carries. Thank you very much, Lisa and Jeremy. I very much look forward to the next time when we are able to go to Neptune and watch one of your performances.
Thank you, Chairman Russell and the committee. We can't wait to welcome the community back to Neptune.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The next item on the agenda is information items brought forward, and there are none. And because of the rework of the agenda, the next item on the agenda is item 12.2.1, the third quarter 2020-21 financial report. So I would like to hand it over to Dave Harley, the Manager of Accounting and Financial Reporting.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Good afternoon. As I said, my name is Dave Harley. I'm the Manager of Accounting and Financial Reporting, and I'm here today to take you through the third quarter financial report. If we move to the next slide, please. So to begin with, we'll start with our projected operating surplus. We are currently projecting a surplus as of December 31st of $6.1 million. The largest drivers of this increase are, of course, as we've heard during the budget presentations, we've seen a great increase in the D-transfer tax over what we had previously expected. So that increase is about $10.1 million projected at this point in time. On top of that, we've seen a decrease in our salary and benefits of $9.3 million, largely due to the efforts made on behalf of the organization through a hiring freeze and the cancellation of the internship program for the year. But we have seen that partially offset by about $2.2 million worth of overtime. Our valuation allowance has decreased by $7.8 million. We've seen greater than expected collections of property taxes, so we've felt that we no longer need the increase that we'd initially expected on the valuation allowance. We've had an increase in tax revenue of $2.5 million due to receiving fewer assessment appeals. And we've also had an increase in bookings at RBC and BMO Centre prior to what we'd budgeted, or greater than what we'd budgeted due to the strict reductions we'd taken in revenues during our revamped budget process. On top of that, we're seeing some one-time credits from Divert Nova Scotia, and we've also seen an increase in the last quarter of our building permit revenue, which has driven another increase of $430,000. Next slide, please. So offsetting these surpluses, we had, as we spoke of last quarter, a balloon payment to the Nova Scotia Municipal Finance Corporation of $6 million. That was a one-time payment that will offset future costs of interest and debt repayment. We've seen an increase in funding for our MDF, our multi-district facilities, due to the deficits that they're experiencing as a result of COVID. So we've been required to fund them an additional $6.4 million. We've seen a decrease in parking, strictly around fines, paid parking, and summary offense tickets of roughly $4.3 million is what we're projecting our decrease to be this year. We have a deficit at the Scotiabank Centre that's expected to be in the area of $2.8 million, and we've also seen an increase in insurance claims and premiums of $2.2 million. On top of this, we've seen additional costs. Our initial response costs for COVID cleaning was $680,000, and we've also seen a decrease in lower monthly parking rentals at Metro Park, which is another $430,000. Next slide, please. So on top of these impacts, we also continue to monitor certain risks that are currently outstanding at this point in time. On top of these there's still several unknowns with the impacts of COVID-19, and so any additional waves or any additional restrictions could cause us additional impacts. Same with transit ridership levels as we look for them to return in the wake of the easing of restrictions. We're not seeing them return to levels that we've previously seen, so that's going to continue to have an impact. We also, as we do every year, we have the potential impacts of winter-related weather conditions, and we are keeping an eye on commodity costs as we do each year. Next slide, please. Moving on to our councillors' funds. In terms of our district capital funds, we have a total budget of $2.3 million, 1.9 of which has been spent or committed this year, leaving another $0.4 million available. In terms of district activity funds, we have a $72,000 budget, and we've spent or committed almost $27,000, leaving another $45,000 available to be spent this year. And the details of these funds are available on attachments 3 and 4 of the report. Next slide, please. So this section refers to the 21 recreation area rates that we have in place. At the start of the year, there was a surplus in these accounts of $1.5 million. We've received revenues of $0.8 million and have spent slightly less than that at $0.7 million. So we have a surplus as of December 31st at $1.6 million. And you can see the in attachment 5 the details on the revenue and expenses and the surplus for each of the area rates. Next slide, please. So for reserves, we are currently projecting a balance as of March 31st, 2021 of $254.4 million. This is an increase of about $47 million over budget, driven largely by the Safe Restart money that we received from the province, as well as the moving of some real estate transactions, which were originally projected to take place in the next year up into the current year. Going out the next 3 years, we have projected reserve balances in 21-22 of $264 million, 22-23 of $287 million, and 23-24 of $301 million. And you can see the details of these in attachment 6. Next slide, please. In terms of our aged accounts receivable, we have a total gross outstanding accounts receivable of $47.4 million as of December 31st. This includes $25.8 million in property taxes, $10.8 million in local improvement charges, $4.8 million in payments in lieu of taxes, and then another $6 million in general revenue. The details of this is also available, as well as the age breakdown in attachment 7. Moving on to our capital projection summary. So we have a net budget available for capital spending of $314.3 million as of December 31st. We'd spent by that point $105.8 million, and we're projecting to spend another $60.7 million by the end of the fiscal year. This is going to lead us to having a projected carry forward of $147.8 million. And in attachment 8, you can find details on the different capital projects and what the related spends and carry forwards will be. Next slide, please. Now moving on to the provincially legislated reporting that we do. We have to report on our hospitality expenses on a quarterly basis. Now, due to COVID restrictions, we've actually had no hospitality expenses in the third quarter of the year. This is to go on top of virtually no expenses being reported throughout the first 2 quarters of the year as well. So it's really in line with what we'd expected to see this year. And then on to our next slide. Here we have our expenses for reportable individuals. So these reportable individuals are made up of the mayor, councillors, and the CAO. So for the quarter, we've had expenditures of $4,984, and our year-to-date total is now $15,000. And as you can see, the majority of this spend is within local travel, so it's mileage reimbursement. You can see the details of where it's coming from in attachment 10, and other than that, we'll move on to the next slide. And we're ready for any questions. Happy to answer any if you have any.
Thank you very much. Councillor Cleary.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Mr. Harley. Just a couple of quick questions. So the first one is the line item for recoverable debt. It was budgeted at around 15 million, and I see right now it's 22 million in the current projection. So just for my edification here, does that mean we're collecting a lot more debt than we were expecting to collect, roughly 7 million more than we thought. So I guess at the beginning of the recast budget, we were being very conservative in how much we would actually get given the economic circumstances we were in. And I looked at previous years, and it seems that, that's even better than in some other years. So can you just speak to the recoverable debt, what it is, and why you think we're doing much better than we projected to do?
And go ahead.
Sorry, I'm just trying to find the numbers you're quoting there.
It was, I'm looking, it's attachment 1.
The third page.
Yeah. Under fiscal services revenue, recoverable debt, third line item from the bottom.
Okay, there we go. Yes, the change there, that's $6.7 million, is that's actually based on an accounting change that we've actually made in regards to our Solar City. So it's what you'll actually see there is while we are seeing a $6.7 million increase in the revenue side, we're also seeing a $6.7 million offset on the expense side as well. So it's going to net to zero. There's no actual change on our
So that
improvement. It's strictly an accounting change that we've made.
Okay, so that's just we're lending out more money on Solar City, so we expect to be getting more money back from the money we're lending out.
Well, it's more just a change in the way we're recognizing it. So prior to, we've been recording it as a capital project and deferring some of those expenses and costs, and now we're recognizing them all at once within operating. But we're not seeing an increase or decrease in our surplus or deficit as a result of that. It is going to net itself out 100% and leave us in the same position.
Okay, and so actually, if you'll forgive me here, the chair would like me to put the motion on the floor. So I'll do that. That the Audit and Finance Standing Committee forward the third quarter 2020-2021 financial report to Regional Council for their information.
Thank you very much, Councillor Cleary. Do we have a seconder for that motion?
Seconded, Councillor Daigle-Gammon.
Thank you very much, Councillor Daigle-Gammon.
And Mr. Chair, if I might just really quickly, one
Absolutely.
other is on Parks and Recreation, with the multi-district facilities, and I see the debt coming in, or the deficit from those facilities around $6.5 million, and that's the lion's share really of Parks and Rec's overage in this report. What is our legal obligation with MDFs? So with multi-district facilities, because they're our buildings, but it's a separate board that's responsible for them. I know a few years ago we more closely aligned HRM with those MDFs, and we've sort of taken on the revenue collection with the booking system now. Legend, that's integrated. So how integrated are they with us, and is that really our deficit regardless of whether they're managing it well or not? Or can HRM, for example, say, you're responsible for that at some point, you got to make it up in the future? So can you just sort of tell me where we stand in terms of our legal obligation for that deficit with the MDFs?
Through you, Mr. Chair, to the councillor. So with regard to the management agreements that we have in place with those MDFs, we are actually responsible for funding their deficits. At the same time, when they post a surplus throughout the year now, that surplus money actually flows through directly to HRM. So it's what we are doing is we're no longer leaving them in a surplus or deficit position that will accumulate over time. It's either funded directly by us each year, or it is paid directly to us each year, depending on their position at the end of the year. Now, I believe there is some language in the agreement that speaks about ongoing deficits and how that will be addressed at that point in time. But in terms of each individual year, that is kind of how we're handling it. We would collect any money that they actually had as a surplus at the end of the year, or we will fund them any deficit that they have.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Hardy. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Purdy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I was just wondering if you could speak to the discrepancy between the budgets of the councillors' district capital funds. There seems to be quite a gap between districts as to the budget, and I was just wondering why.
Sure. Through you, Mr. Councillor, or Mr. Chair, to the councillor. The reason for the discrepancy is the way that we handle the budget that is unspent at the end of each year. So any amount that is not spent at the end of each year will carry forward into the next year and become part of the next year's budget. So while they each get the same base budget, it's all dependent on how much is carried forward from the previous year.
Okay, thank you. I have one more question, actually. Under your Parks and Rec, there was an acronym NAIG, and I was just thinking, what does that stand for?
It's the North American Indigenous Games.
Ah, thank you.
Okay, thank you. I don't see any further questions in the chat. Thank you very much, Dave, for presenting this to us. Look forward to discussing it further at council. Since there are no further questions, all in favor of the motion to forward this, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, signify by saying nay. Great, thank you. The motion carries. The next item on the agenda is item 12.1.1 with the Auditor General and the Police Information Technology Audit Report. So I'm going to hand it over to the Auditor General. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Thank you. I'm pleased to be here today to discuss the public report on my recent audit of Halifax Regional Police Information Technology. With me today, I also have Ashley Maxwell, who was the lead auditor for this particular audit, and Ashley will do part of the presentation as well. As you know, there are both public and in-camera reports for this audit, and that is not at all unusual for an IT audit, as there are often findings that could risk the security of IT operations if they're released publicly. Next slide, please. So just to cover the audit scope, so you set the stage, I guess, for the audit. We looked at systems that HRP IT has sole responsibility for, and we excluded HRM ICT and HRP shared responsibilities. Our scope did include both semi-covert and covert areas within HRP. And we also looked at 2016-17 consultant recommendations that were reported to the Board of Police Commissioners as complete in 2019. However, I did want to say we did not look at all of the recommendations from that 16-17 IT security risk assessment, although there certainly would have been overlap between that and what we ultimately covered in our audit. The purpose of our audit was to look at whether or not Halifax Regional Police appropriately manages risks to its IT systems. Next slide, please. So our overall conclusion is that HRP is not effectively managing risks to IT systems. There's been limited progress in addressing the recommendations from that 2016-17 consultant report that assessed IT security risks. HRP's IT policies are outdated. We also found a lack of documented processes for things like updating systems, system backups, and HRP IT management did not provide the Board of Police Commissioners with adequate information on IT security consultant report. It is important to note that the majority of recommendations, both in the public and in-camera reports, do not require an investment in IT security. However, for those which may require funds, it is also important to consider the risks to IT security of not acting. Next slide, please. So the first section in the public report deals with oversight. And as I said, we found there was limited progress on the 2016-17 security risk assessment. The existing IT policies at Halifax Regional Police were outdated, and we found they did not cover key IT security risks that you would expect they should cover. We also found HRP management did not provide adequate information to the Board of Police Commissioners on that IT security consultant report. Next slide, please. I'll speak to the information provided to the Board of Police Commissioners to start with. So in 2017, when that report was first received from the consultant, the board was not given sufficient information by HRP management on that report and on the risks that were identified in it. In July of 2019, HRP IT management briefed the board on the status of the recommendations for the semi-covert side of that report. The board was told that 13 of 67 recommendations were complete. However, our audit found that only 5 of those were complete. The board was not briefed at any point on the covert system recommendations from that security risk assessment. The board has administrative responsibilities related to HRP, oversight responsibilities related to HRP. And management has a responsibility to make sure that the board receives sufficient and accurate information related to IT operations. We have made a recommendation to ensure that the information provided to the board is complete and accurate. Next slide, please. We also found there's insufficient oversight of the covert IT system. One staff member is responsible for that system, and he is not supervised by anyone who has an IT background. There's also no reporting relationship between that individual and the Chief Information Security Officer position at HRP. We also found that the CISO was not aware of the covert section of the 2016-17 consultant report. Early in our planning for this audit, we asked for a copy of that, and we understand that the CISO then asked for a copy at that time as well. We've made a recommendation to establish a reporting relationship between the CISO's position and staff that have covert IT operation responsibilities. Next slide, please. HRP needs better risk management processes to protect their IT information. The consultant completed that 2016-17 security risk assessment that I've referred to, but it has not been refreshed since that time. And there is no plan detailing how the risks it identified will be mitigated. Existing IT policies are not adequate. Draft policies have been prepared, however, they have not been implemented. They've been drafted for over 18 months, and work is needed to finalize and put them in place. Existing policies don't address key risks such as access control, which is important for privacy and for protecting information, and things like encryption of storage devices, which helps protect information if storage media is accessed or if it goes missing. We've made a number of recommendations to address those issues. Next slide, please. I'm going to turn it over to Ashley to walk you through the next few slides.
All right, thanks, Evangeline. So the next several slides will cover security of information and assets at HRP. Overall, our audit found aspects of physical security over IT assets are adequate, but there are gaps that should be addressed. Specifically, HRP has not assessed HRM policies for teleworking to determine whether they are adequate for HRP purposes. HRP IT has not identified which physical areas and information are more sensitive. There are no policies to address management of removable media, such as USB devices. And IT equipment inventory listing needs updating. I will cover these points in more detail in the following slides. Next slide, please. HRP does not have its own teleworking policy. HRP IT told us security of environment and equipment for employees working from home is HRM ICT's responsibility. However, HRP has not assessed whether ICT's teleworking policies are sufficient for its operations, in particular, whether there are any unique law enforcement considerations. This is important because HRP employees working from home may access sensitive information, and HRM may have different requirements which may not cover specific risks to HRP. We've recommended HRP assess ICT division policies for teleworking to determine whether they are adequate for HRP purposes and address any concerns identified in its own policies. HRP has not implemented policies to address which physical areas within its facilities are sensitive. HRP does have a draft policy that defines levels of security, such as public, internal, protected. However, it has not determined what levels of security are required within different areas of HRP buildings. Without established security perimeters, inappropriate access to critical or sensitive information may occur. We've recommended when HRP finalizes its draft policies, it should include which levels of physical security are required throughout its facilities. HRP's data centers have backup supplies to maintain service during an outage. Management told us the buildings the data centers are located have generators. Additionally, we noted data centers had uninterrupted power supplies. Uninterrupted power supplies allow equipment to run until a generator starts. This helps to ensure equipment continues to operate without interruption. However, during the audit, HRP IT management told us the maintenance contract for their uninterrupted power supplies had not been renewed, meaning maintenance cannot be performed. We were later told the contract had actually been renewed months earlier in March 2020. Management should monitor contract renewals so HRP can get the services it pays for. HRP's policies do not address secure data destruction. Staff should be aware of the need to securely overwrite storage media before disposing of equipment. Otherwise, sensitive information may remain on the equipment and could be accidentally released. There is no existing policy that covers this. However, HRP does have a draft policy that speaks to ensuring storage media has been securely overwritten before it's disposed. There are also no policies that address management of removable media, such as USB devices. Removable media with sensitive information must be protected from unauthorized access. For example, USBs are easy to lose or steal due to their size. If the USB is not encrypted, the data on it would be readable to anyone who accesses it. HRP has a draft policy that speaks to levels of encryption required based on sensitivity of the data. However, these policies state removable media should not be used. This does not match HRP's current practices. We've recommended that HRP implement policies that address these areas. Next slide, please. HRP's inventory list for its information technology are inaccurate and incomplete. HRP is responsible for mobile data terminals, which are terminals used by police officers and vehicles, as well as certain workstations and surveillance equipment. There are inventory lists for the mobile data terminals and the surveillance equipment, and an inventory list was developed for the workstations during the audit. However, inventory tracking for the mobile data terminals is incomplete and inaccurate. Of the 21 terminals we sampled, 3 were not on the inventory list, 5 were assigned to the wrong vehicle, and 1 was listed twice, assigned to 2 different vehicles. During the audit, software that was being used to track these terminals expired, and HRP did not take steps to get an inventory list before expiry. Without accurate inventory lists, assets could go missing and HRP may not know. We've recommended HRP update and regularly maintain its information technology asset list. Next slide, please. Our audit also considered processes to keep systems updated and backed up. There are no documented processes for operating procedures to maintain the 2 systems we audited. This would include such processes as patch management to keep systems updated, change management, and backup procedures to ensure information can be recovered if there are issues. Having documented procedures for these activities is important because they help to ensure a consistent approach to system changes and to help prevent important updates from being missed. We've recommended HRP develop and implement operating procedures to maintain its systems. And next slide, please. And I'll hand it back over to Evangeline.
Thank you, Ashley. I'm just going to wrap things up. The public report has 12 recommendations. All have been accepted by management, and the responses include timelines for when those will be implemented, which is always a positive sign. We will follow up in 18 months, and we expect roughly 80% of recommendations for any audit we do will be completed within that time period. We'll report the results of the follow-up at that time. Next slide. So now we would be happy to take any questions you might have on the public.
Thank you very much for the comprehensive report at this level. I really appreciate it. If any councillors in the meeting would like to ask any questions, feel free to enter them in the chat. I don't believe there's a motion on the floor at this point. Sorry, I don't believe there's a motion for this report, although we may forward it to full council. Please keep in mind when you're asking questions that this is the public session and there will be a further report and further discussion in an in-camera session. Go ahead, Councillor Kent.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm just wondering, your last comment, Evangeline, which was around the timelines that they've accepted the timelines. Can we have a sense of what that would be? What would be considered reasonable? And when you check in in 18 weeks, I think it was, would that be sort of partially through the timelines that were being committed to? Is it like a mid-range checkup, or is it towards the end? You know what I mean? I'm just wondering where we fit with making sure we have the ability to keep them going, keep the push on.
Sure. So first I'll clarify a couple of things, if that's okay. 18 months is our typical follow-up process. So we try to follow up all of our audits roughly 18 months. We do sometimes try to combine a couple of audit reports that might have been released close together. So occasionally somebody might get a few extra months to get the recs complete, but we do follow up. And generally what we find, so we have a performance measure that 80% of the recommendations will be implemented in that time frame. So that applies to every audit that we do. And it's meant to acknowledge that, you know, you will have the odd recommendation that might be larger or perhaps has funding or is a really big project associated with it, might take longer, but that most things likely can be accomplished within 18 months. So when I commented on the timelines, I was referring to the timelines that management at Halifax Regional Police had included in their responses to the recommendations throughout the report. And so many of those timelines would be less than 18 months. They've indicated, you know, in some cases a few months for when they intend to make changes, and sometimes longer depending on the particular recommendation. In terms of keeping it going, certainly a better practice, or a best practice if you want to call it that, for oversight bodies such as Audit and Finance, Regional Council, or the Board of Police Commissioners for that matter, would be to keep something like that followed up on a more regular basis with management. So what I would suggest, if I can, is that you establish some sort of a regular follow-up process. In an ideal world, it would be for all audit recommendations and not just these ones, where you're getting some sort of regular reporting, whether it's quarterly or monthly or every 2 months, you know, whatever the oversight body feels the need is, from management saying, here's how many recs that we've addressed to this point. And then we will come in after 18 months and provide an independent opinion whether or not that's an accurate representation of where things are. Does that answer your questions?
Yes, thank you very much. That's very helpful.
Okay, thanks.
Thanks, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Daigle-Gammon.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. And thank you, Madam Auditor General, for such a wonderful report and so detailed. I think I've heard our mayor a couple of times say the benefit of having an Auditor General, and this is evidence of that. And so just my compliments and thank you. Without having you and your team doing your work, we wouldn't be able to see where we need to make improvements and change things. So my compliments and thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Thank you, Evangeline. So I'm just going off the public report here, and we're seeing language that we don't often see from you, Madam Auditor General. Things like give an incorrect information, not getting adequate information, needs significant improvements, not effectively managing risks. I guess my question to you was that I recognize that these recommendations have all been accepted and are going to be worked on, and you did indicate, I think, that most of these are not requiring of major investment, but just requiring of a different way of doing things. But can you just speak to how this compares to some other reports that you've done since you've been Auditor General?
Sure. Maybe I'll speak to the bit about the incorrect or inadequate information a little bit separately. So for me, I attach, I guess, even more importance to that sort of area, because I think oversight bodies, whether it be Regional Council, Audit and Finance Standing Committee, the Board of Police Commissioners, or whatever oversight body, it's so important that the information that they receive is complete and accurate so that they can discharge their duties in those roles. And so that's why that particular area was so concerning to me, was I felt that the board had not been given accurate information on the status of those recommendations back in July of 2019. Overall, I think the overall conclusion speaks for itself. The results aren't great, and we've had a lot of discussions with management about it. I am very pleased to see management has accepted all of the recommendations, and I'm pleased to see that there are timelines in the responses to deal with those. That says to me that they've given it some thought and they're looking at how they can make improvements. But yes, certainly it's certainly not an overly positive result. No.
I guess the good news is that we've already heard from the chief that they accept the recommendations, and his commitment to taking the audit seriously and implement all recommendations. That's a positive. And can you just speak to the resources required? You do say that this is not really so much a matter of resources as it is a matter of changing direction.
So I'll use the draft policies as a good example, because that's certainly a lot of the recs. If they put the draft policies in place and did the work to get them in place, a lot of the recs might actually be addressed. So it's not a case of, you need all these new systems and all kinds of infrastructure money. There may be some recommendations where there is some funding required, but the majority of them are documenting processes that might be in place, or formalizing things, or updating policies that just haven't been kept up to date and therefore are not in step with current risks in IT security, things like security of removable media like USBs, or secure deletion of media if a device is damaged, those sorts of things. So a lot of that could be accomplished through finalizing policies and getting them in place so that staff at HRP are using those policies every day in their work.
Okay, thank you. And I guess that's the positive, that this can be done, that the chief is committed to doing it. The CAO will certainly do whatever he can do. And so we appreciate this report and the roadmap that you've laid out. Thanks, Avengeli.
Thank you.
Thank you. I don't see any further speakers for the public report that we have. I just want to clarify that although the follow-up is 18 months, we can request a further follow-up. Eventually, would we be able to request an interim? You have suggested that we set a policy of an interim follow-up on a monthly or quarterly basis. I'm wondering if we would be able to request an interim follow-up 9 or 12 months out.
So when I made the suggestion of following up, I was referring to establishing a process with Halifax Regional Police Management as opposed to my office. I do occasionally get requests in this forum to follow up more often than 18 months, but I think it's important to stick to the 18 months from my office's perspective for this reason. It gives management a chance to deal with the recommendations without us in sort of knocking on their door and saying, hello, are you done yet? How many of those have you implemented? And because we're looking for assurance and we're asking them for information to prove what they're telling us is the status. And so I think it's best to wait the full 18 months for that and allow them that period. But I do think, I mean, it's very much a best practice for oversight bodies throughout the world, really, to request that management provide action plans and then provide updates on those action plans. So to me, the deadlines that HRP management and the chief have noted in their responses, or the dates that they've put in by when they intend to deal with these recs, form an action plan of sorts. They begin to lay out for you what their intent is, which recs they intend to deal with first, that sort of thing. And my suggestion would be that you follow up with them and establish some sort of regular process where they can come and let you know how they're doing with those. But from an audit resources standpoint, I really think it would be best if we waited the full 18 months. I think it makes it easier for management, and it also allows us to keep doing new audits as opposed to having follow-up chew up too much of our time.
Okay, thank you very much for that. Are there any further questions for the public report? I don't see any, so at this point, I believe we should move in camera and receive the other report. Would someone be willing to make a motion for us to move in camera?
I'll move that, Chair.
Councillor Cleary, second.
Okay, thank you. All in favor of moving in camera to continue with the Auditor General's report?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Great, thank you. Over to the clerk. How do we proceed with this?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We'll put the in-camera screen up just shortly, and if members can leave this meeting and head over into the in-camera meeting, which you should have all received the invitation towards. We will join you shortly, and we'll just check when everyone is there.
Okay, I am seeing that at least one member has not received the in-camera invite, so if you could send that again, I would appreciate it.
Certainly, I will send that again.
Thank you very much. And so we are back. I see that we have a quorum, although we don't have all members of the Audit and Finance Standing Committee. So I would like to continue at this point. We have the item 12.3 on the agenda, which is the Grants Committee, and we have nothing from there. Item 12.4 committee members, and we have nothing from there. We have no motions. We have taken care of the in-camera session. We have no added items. Do we have any notices of motion? I don't hear any notices of motion. So then we have the date of our next meeting, which is March 25th, 2021. And I would like to ask for a motion to adjourn, please.
So moved, Mr. Chair.
Wonderful. Councillor Daigle-Gammon, thank you very much. We stand adjourned. We'll see you again on March 25th. Have a great month.